Pueden tomar asiento. Les damos la más cordial bienvenida a este acto público de reconocimiento de responsabilidad internacional
Welcome
del
to
Estado,
this
que deriva del
public
acuerdo de solución amistosa alcanzado en el caso número
ceremony to
12.956,
celebrate the agreement
titulado
that was
FS,
achieved
se hizo ante la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos
with the
Humanos.
participation of the Inter-American
Saludamos a
Commission on
quienes nos
Human Rights.
acompañan en
We
esta
want to
ocasión,
welcome
la
everyone
presencia del
joining
presidente de
us
la
today
República,
through the
Gabriel
streaming,
Boric,
and we want to
señora
welcome the
Isca
President of the
Siches,
Republic,
ministra de Interior y Seguridad Pública,
Mr. Gabriel
señora
Boric, Mrs.
Antonia
Francisca,
Cola, ministra de
Minister of
Relaciones
Public
Exteriores,
Security,
señor
Minister of
Nicolás
Foreign
Caballo,
Affairs,
ministro subrogante de Educación,
Deputy
señora
Minister of
Marcela Ríos,
Education,
ministra de Justicia
Mrs.
y Derechos Humanos,
Minister
señora
of
Ivonne
Justice and
Villarzi,
Human
ministra de
Rights,
Salud, señor Carlos
Minister of
Montes,
Health,
ministro de
Mr.
Vivienda
Carlos
y
Monte,
Urbanismo,
Minister of Housing,
honorables senadoras y senadores,
honorable
honorables
senators,
diputadas y diputados,
members of
señora
the
Andrea Sánchez, ministra de la
Congress
Corte Suprema,
and the House of
señora Jimena
Representatives.
Fuentes,
Welcome everyone.
subsecretaria de Relaciones Exteriores, señora
Undersecretary
Aide Oberreuter, subsecretaria de Derechos Humanos, señor Cristóbal Cuadrado, subsecretario de Salud Pública, señora Luz Vidal, subsecretaria de la Mujer y Equidad de Género, señora Irací Hasler, alcaldesa de Santiago. Queremos agradecer muy especialmente la presencia del comisionado y relator para Chile de la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos, señor Joel Hernández García, y de la señora Tania Renún Pansi, secretaria de la misma institución. De manera telemática, también nos Ana de Derechos Humanos.
Mr.
Adicionalmente,
Carlos Montes, Minister of Housing, honorable members of the Senate and House of Representatives,
en especial,
Mrs. Andrea Sanchez, Minister of the Supreme Court, Mrs. Jimena Fuentes, Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Aide Oberreuter, Undersecretary of Human Rights, Mr. Cristóbal Cuadrado, Undersecretary of Public Health, Mrs. Luz Vidal, Undersecretary of Women and Gender Equality, Mrs. Iracy Hasler, Mayor of Santiago. We want to thank especially the presence of Commissioner and Rapporteur for Chile of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, Mr. Joel Hernández Garcia, and Mrs. Tania Renobalsi, Executive Secretary of the same institution. Online, we are followed by the member of the team of Friendly Solutions of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Additionally, we want to welcome all the NGOs that are joining us today, representing the victim in this case, especially the chairperson of Vivo Positiva, Sara Araya Leighton, and the Chief Program Officer of the Center for Reproductive Rights, Mrs. Anir Mutani Indiga.
En contra del Estado de Chile, alegando la vulneración de los derechos contenidos en los artículos 5, 8, 11, 17, 24, 25 y 26 de la Convención Americana sobre Derechos Humanos. Esto es el derecho a la integridad personal, a las garantías judiciales, a la protección.
The rights contained in Articles 5, 8, 11, 24, 17, 26 of the Inter-American Convention on Human Rights, which is the right to personal integrity, protection of one's dignity, the protection of family, equality before the law, legal protection and rights in relation to Article 1.1 of the same convention, which is a general obligation of respect and guarantee. Also, Articles 7 and 9 of the Inter-American Convention to prevent and to eradicate violence against women, the Convention Belém do Pará. The petition was argued upon the fact of that during November in 2002, Francisca, a woman who was 20 years old, was sterilized without her consent after the delivery in which she gave birth to her child. She was made aware when she woke up from the C-section process that she was subject to by a nurse that told her that she had been surgically sterilized. During the pregnancy, she went through all the regular appointments, and when she was made aware that she was living with HIV, she received retroviral therapy and had the decision to have a C-section. Throughout the period, she was never advised on the sterilization process nor other birth control methods. Likewise, she never gave verbal nor written consent for the surgery to be sterilized. Because of that reason, in 2007, there was a complaint before the courts, and once all the national instances were reached without any type of repair nor favorable sentence, it was there was a decision made to go to the Inter-American Court of Justice. The Commission approved the report 5214, where they resolved to accept the petition of Francisca regarding the violation of Articles 5, 8, 11, 13, 17, 24, and 25 of the Inter-American Commission in relation to Article 1.1 and 7 of the Convention of Belém do Pará. The Convention decided to notify both parties to publish this into their yearly report. 3 years later, March 18th, 2017, the Commission heard the case where there was a hearing with the testimony of Francisca and also an expert of HIV and STDs, and they highlighted the responsibility of the state for the damage that was caused upon her because of the forced sterilization and the refusal of the legal system to thoroughly investigate the facts and determine the corresponding sanctions due to the physical and psychological damage that was inflicted upon her. In addition to that, losing her ability to bear children forever. Also, the state in said hearing offered to start with a process of friendly solution, recognizing that, quote, what was lived by Francisca is a situation of vulnerability of the rights as a consequence of the actions of the state, end quotes. Because of that, on May 24th, 2017, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights sent the state a document from the victim expressing that they were proposing specific reparation measures to reach a state or to reach a situation of friendly solution. In June 2017, the state sent an answer back to their petition and attached the document basis for the signing of a friendly solution drafted within the framework of the interinstitutional table comprised by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Undersecretary of Human Rights, the Public Ministry, the Supreme Court of Justice, the Ministry of Women and Gender Equality, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Education. This allowed that in October 2017, both or the victim accepted the procedure. Between 2018 and 2021, after a number of meetings with the support of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, the negotiation ended up with the signature of an agreement for a friendly solution in August the 3rd, 2021. The agreement included cross-sectionally a gender approach and also a human rights approach in the design of each of the measures that were agreed by both parties. It contains several measures of reparation, among which we have this public ceremony of recognition of the responsibility of the state, a private meeting to offer apologies, a financial compensation, the dissemination of the agreement, access to housing subsidies, scholarships, as well as other higher education benefits, health care services, dissemination of guidelines for healthcare services on forced sterilization, campaigns to raise awareness to overcome discrimination for people that live with HIV, the rights of women to live a life free of violence, increasing delivery rooms with more comprehensive attention, and the installation of a memorial site, and also education with a gender approach. These are all measurements of reparation, guarantees of non-repetition, and so on and so forth. There's also a clause to safeguard the personal information of Francisca, and the information of the case will have follow-up mechanism coordinated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, comprised by the ministries responsible for putting in place the measurements and the representatives of the victims that will meet every 3 months or whenever it is necessary by the
Damos
parties.
la palabra la presidenta de Vivo Positivo, señora Sara Araya Leighton.
We thank you, Director Tomás Pascual, for those remarks. Now, we will give the floor to the chair of Vivo Positivo, Mrs. Sara Araya Leighton.
Hace 20 años no lo usaba, pero hoy día sí.
Hello, good afternoon.
Bueno, muy buenas tardes al
I'll be
señor
putting on my
Joel,
glasses today to read.
relator para Chile de la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos. A la señora Tania Renaud Pansy, secretaria ejecutiva de la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos
Good morning, Mr. Joel Hernandez Garcia, Commissioner and Rapporteur for Chile from the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, Mrs. Tania Granau, Executive Secretary of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights,
al señor Gabriel
Mrs.
Boric,
Enin Mouton,
presidente.
Director of the Program
Muchas gracias por estar aquí, a la
of
compañera Ángel,
Reproductive Rights, Mrs. Antonio Rejola, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Ambassador Tomás Pascual,
una respuesta de salud y
Mr.
mental,
Gabriel Boric, our President.
Nacional Viva,
Welcome and thank you everyone for being here today.
las organizaciones de mujeres feministas. A las organizaciones también que están por online,
Also,
que son
greetings to all
la
the social organizations that are part of Vivo and our colleagues joining us today, Nación Gay, and also other organizations of feminist women. Also, organizations that are following us online through the streaming, which are the Latin American Movement of Women, Mujeres Positivas from different cities of Chile. All of you, thank you for joining us today. And greetings to all the authorities today. I believe that this is something that we had never seen before, that so many authorities from the state were present in such a ceremony. So thank you so much for coming and thank you for joining us today. I will start with a couple of words telling you a story. And it goes during the first quarter of her pregnancy, she started having a discharge that seemed orange. She was concerned. She went to the hospital for an appointment. However, instead of taking care of her, the workers rejected her and they told her to come back when it was her appointment. 3 days later, she came to the hospital bleeding with severe pain, but she stayed unwelcomed. She did not receive any type of care while the staff were taking care of other patients that came in afterwards, including those that arrived after she did. She did not take care of her. After her first pregnancy, she realized she was HIV positive. However, the pain was stronger and stronger. By the third day, without any type of health care, she went to the hospital again, and because of that poor attention, she ended up miscarrying her pregnancy. And she was told that God knows why things happen and that she was going to give birth to sick children. She was 20 when she was sterilized. Francisca was 20 when she was sterilized by a doctor during a C-section in 2002. She had gone to the hospital for a scheduled C-section, but the night before the surgery, her labor started. She was brought to the surgery room after midnight without ever having had any type of conversation regarding family planning nor regarding her wishes. The surgeon decided to sterilize her while the C section took place. When she woke up from the surgery a few hours later, she said, I heard that I had been sterilized when the C section took place. I was in the recovery room in the hospital when the nurse came in, and after asking how I was feeling, she said, I was already sterilized and unable to get pregnant and have children again. I was treated like less than a person. I never decided this. They took my fertility away from me. Francisca took all the necessary measures to decrease the risk of infecting her child, and he was actually not infected. Both her and her husband deeply regretted the loss of her fertility and the fact that they are not going to be able to have more children. These are some of the testimonials that are gathered in the testimonial that has been gathered by the organizations that have been involved in this case in over 10 years. It is very difficult to summarize in just some words what this type of event feels like. This is about reconciliation and recognition, which are words that don't even come close to expressing the horror of many Chilean women, where the public healthcare system took their rights to be mothers, a decision that was made by other people, mostly men, but also with the support of many professional women in the healthcare system. They were taken forever the possibility of deciding when and how many children to have. Chilean women have been, by decades, victims of violence. We are discriminated because of our class, because of our ethnicity, sexual preferences, and in this case, for our situation living with HIV. The case of women only gets worse due to bias where it shouldn't happen. This is the world of healthcare. Just imagine what happens everywhere else. After the issue came to light, thanks to the work of Vivo Positivo, there was a refusal of the names, and the Minister of Health back then said that the names were not going to be disclosed. He even said that things had not happened, and there was a denial of justice on behalf of the National Courts of Justice. There were pressure to stop the case from moving forward and to keep it this to keep it in secrecy by the government, more concerned with the date, more concerned with the image of authorities than the concern for the victims. There was no support, with the exception of activists. If this case hadn't called the attention of the Center of Sexual and Reproductive Rights in the US, we wouldn't even be here. Many of you wouldn't even know about this case. You wouldn't even heard about it, much less we wouldn't even think about reparation. We thank Francisca for her bravery that allowed her to push this case forward. And I want to wrap up by saying that in Chile, women's rights have been violated in democracy, and these violations are crimes against humanity. This comes to show that in the activities of the state, institutions do not work, and complaints do not work, reports do not work, which is why we reached out to the Inter American Human Rights Commission, and today we are facing recognition of these facts of violence that were inflicted upon the bodies of women who lived and are living for the rest of their lives with the consequences. Today is a time of recognition, paying homage to women who fought for themselves. Many of them are not even longer with us. They are not in the ceremony, which is also a way of highlighting and rescuing the memory of all the discriminations that women living with HIV have gone through. Forced sterilization of women that live with HIV will no longer be denied, even though most of the victims are not able to receive justice. At least their stories will not be hidden as many wanted. Thanks to the work of one victim and the civil society and international cooperation, this crime against humanity will not be forgotten. Thank you.
Would like to thank the word from Miss Araya. I have a petition from a woman from Villamar who could make an effort of making a change where we can get milk, breastfeed milk for women. Thank you very much, President of Vivo Positivo, Sara. So now we will have Catarina Marquez, Regional Director for the Center of Reproductive Rights, and Carmen Martinez Lopez from the Legal Strategies for the LATAM and the Caribbean. Good afternoon. Greetings to everyone who are here with us and who are listening to us. To the President of the Republic, Gabriel Boric, to the ministers, and to all the authorities from the executive, legislative, and judicial world, all the representative of the interrelations, to my colleague from the Representative Center and Vivo Positivo, and of course to all the representative of the organization from civil society and friends who are here with us today, but in particular and very strongly greetings to Francisca, who is listening to us and looking at us at this very moment. We are here today thanks to her resilience, resilience and her strength that she's maintained through all these years. We're here today to recognize this right, this fight, this act of recognition really dignifies and Francisca and sends a message to the community, including the international community, about what is unacceptable, what constitute human rights violations, about what cannot be repeated. A strong message about the rights of people living with HIV, that they should never suffer discrimination and that they should always find available, accessible, and quality health services. Any prejudice, stigma, or stereotype that persists must be eradicated. Reinforce a message regarding the reproductive autonomy of women, who should always be able to decide in an informed manner about any reproductive health project, act, or procedure. The life project belong to us and become possible only through the exercise of our freedom and autonomy. And this is the manifestation of dignity. And finally, a message about the value of consent, so that once and for all, it is clear that any act of or intervention without full and informed consent constitute an act of violence. We recognize the transformative measure that Chile is committed to carry out, including, among others, the implementation of awareness campaigns for the care and non-discrimination of people living with HIV, the increase of delivery rooms for comprehensive care and training on sexual and reproductive rights with a gender perspective aimed at the health and judicial sector. It is vitally important that this precedent be translated into the public policies, that the policies are transformed into fact, and that finally our rights become customary. And I can only thank all the people who have made this possible for us to be here today, the commitment of the authorities, the accompaniment of the Center of Reproductive Rights, and above all, Francisca, and so Center of so Sarah from the Vivo Positivo, sorry, and above all, Francisca, and we're honored for you to have allowed us to accompany you in the search of justice. Good afternoon, Mr. President Gabriel, ministers, secretaries, undersecretaries, and other authorities and civil society. I would just like to share a few words from Francisca, who have asked us to read this morning. I open the quotes. I would love to have been me with my voice, my face, my body, the one who, after so many years of struggle, was present to lead in my own name this act. However, sharing my identity would have closed an endless amount of doors for me. To this day, people who carry HIV are still looked down upon with contempt, as it has been our decision to become infected. However, I want to think with conviction that this will change, that the same mistakes as in the past will not be made again, that no woman will be sterilized without her consent, and that with the help of each and every one of you, we will be able to grow as a society and raise awareness about these issues. Those are the words of Francisca.
Conmemoramos hoy su lucha y la de todo un movimiento que en Chile y en la región busca revertir y transformar estas injusticias.
Whom we've had the honor to accompany, represent, and whose story
Su agencia
has left us with so many lessons. Today, we commemorate her struggle and that of an entire movement in Chile and the region that seeks to revert and transform these injustices. Because neither now nor ever should any person be stripped of their agency and autonomy. Thank you very much. Would like to thank the intervention of Catalina Martinez and Carmen Martinez. Now, the rapporteur for Chile for the Inter-American Commission, Mr. Garcia. Good afternoon to everyone. It's an honor for me to be here today on behalf of the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights. I would like to greet the President of Chile, His Excellency Gabriel Boric, to the Minister of External Affairs, Her Excellency Antonia Borejola, to Catalina Martinez and Gabriel Martinez, who represent the Center of Reproductive Rights, and also Sarah from Vivo Positivo, and of course, with all the solidarity to Francisca and her son. I would like to contact you today in my quality of rapporteur of the Commission for Latin America in this very important public act of recognition of responsibility in the case of 12.56. It's an honor and a privilege for me and for the Inter-American Commission to be part of this ceremony, solemn ceremony that is calling us today to commemorate the beginning of a new chapter for Francisca and her son. The Commission salute the government of Chile and recognize the importance of the international recognition from the head of state with the violations of our human rights of Francisca and her son, and the guarantees and the protection of honor and freedom, the liberty of expression, equality in front of the law, and rights that are part of the American Convention. I also see the rights of the state to take any actions of violence against women and to look for their agents and their institutions to behave according to this agreement from the convention. The case of Francisca is very important for the CIH because of the agreement that was agreed upon, because it was a clear violation of the human rights, where multiple factors of vulnerability against Francisca, being a rural woman who lives with HIV and in poverty. On top of that, many violations on her access to health, being a victim of a sterilization, a non-consensual sterilization. And I would like to highlight the importance of this recognition of responsibility, international responsibility of the state, because it's a special element, the agreement that both parts agreed upon, which is the first step towards the full reparation of the damage done to Francisca and her son, and her dignification for the suffering that she's had through the violation she had to suffer. The action of repairing that these kind of act are part of the Siemens, which is a preservation of the historical memory of the fact that have happened, to constitute at the same time an important component for a non-repetition of acts like this one. Through this act, we can share this personal dimension of pain that Francisca has suffered and her son, to transcend to a dimension that will reach the government of Chile, to move forward in this stage towards the elimination of this kind of violence through learning of the mistake and the adoption of new new practice of a better future for women in Chile. For this reason, the Commission recognized the will of the government of Chile to move forward on the agreement for an agreement. The public, we believe that this public act will continue to support the creation and construction of a trust that will reinforce between the full fulfillment of the other obligations that the government has agreed upon. The Commission is observing, satisfied that the government is moving forward on those individual measures agreed upon for the repeal, for the economical compensation, of help for housing and health, and also the diffusion of the agreements. The actions in the process for this friendly settlement and the diffusion of the directive, the sterilization, women's sterilization and masculine sterilization, campaign for the attention and no discrimination of people who live with HIV positive. The Commission values the work done by the government and invite this collaboration, harmonious collaboration with all the entities who are concerned, deploying actions until the full implementation of this friendly settlement. I would like to recognize, on behalf of CDH, the fight done, the tireless fight done by Francisca, who has struggled through a long path in her trying to find justice, and the result will have an impact not only in the full reintegration and repair for her, but also on the structural system of the health department of the government of Chile, that will benefit many women that for many different reasons have been exposed to situations of vulnerability and discrimination, having being VHI positive. To Francisca, to the Center of Reproductive Center, to the State of Government of Chile, my thanks to the trust given to our institution to support you in this path. Thank you very much.
Para lo cual invitamos al escenario a la ministra de Relaciones Exteriores, señora
We thank Commissioner Joel Hernandez for his words, and now we are going to give diplomas to the representatives of the organizations Vivo Positivo and Center for Reproductive Rights, for which we want to invite on the stage the Minister of External Affairs, Antonia Urrejola Noguera. The floor is yours. We want to invite the chair of Vivo Positivo, Sara Araya Leighton, to receive her diploma.
Ahora invitamos a la Chief Program Officer del Centro de Derechos Reproductivos, señora Enid Mutoniniga, a recibir su diploma.
Now we want to invite the Chief Program Officer of the Center for Reproductive Rights, Enid Mutoniniga, to receive her diploma.
Hará uso de la palabra, Su Excelencia, el Presidente de la República, señor Gabriel Boric Font.
To continue with this act, the President of the Republic will take the floor, Mr. Gabriel Boric Font.
Un streaming también. ¿Y dónde está la cámara del streaming? Ahí. En mi calidad de presidente de la República me corresponde.
I understand that there is streaming going on. Where do we have the camera? Over there. Okay, thank you.
De haberlo estudiado y de haber escuchado los testimonios que aquí se han expuesto.
As the President of the Republic of Chile, I have the duty of carrying out this event, but after I have read this, after hearing what has been said today,
De tus derechos,
I would like to start by apologizing to Francisca. I understand that she is across the camera somewhere, across the screen, and I want to apologize for the violation of your rights. And also, I want to apologize for the fact that you were denied justice and for all the time that you had to wait for this. When your story was told, Francisca, I was thinking,
es responsable de estos
and back to the words of Sara, I was thinking how many cases like yours we have never heard of. And it hurts to think that the state that I am representing today is responsible for these cases. And I am committed before you and before everyone sitting here in person that
se han cometido estas
while
atrocidades
we are in office,
sean preparados
we
como
are
responsables.
going to give the best of each and one of us as authorities for this
De
never to
que
happen again.
estamos
And of
hablando hoy día,
course,
lo hago no
so
solo en
that
cumplimiento
in
de compromisos
cases where these violations and atrocities have already happened, they are repaired
de la plena
appropriately.
convicción que la protección, promoción y garantía
I would
de
like you to know that what we are doing today is something we're doing not only to fulfill international commitments within the agreement for the settlement,
reconocer hoy
for the
día la
friendly
protección
settlement, but also with the conviction that the protection, promotion, and guarantees of human rights allow us to look into a future which is more respectful
de avanzar
towards
leyes
the
que garanticen
lives and dignities of people.
los derechos sexuales y reproductivos.
To acknowledge today the responsibility of the state in this case, I think is a milestone which allow us to reinforce our commitment to move forwards with measurements that allow us to fully exercise our sexual and reproductive rights
Discriminación a las personas que viven con
to
VIH.
avoid that this ever happens again in our country.
Consecuencia del estigma social
Also, as Sarah said it herself,
muchas veces olvidado.
we need to continue moving
Quiero aprovechar este momento también
forward and
para
we
agradecer a
need
todas las
to stop discrimination against people living with HIV that has as a consequence social stigma, which is so unfair and many times forgotten. And I would like to take this opportunity as well to thank all the social organizations that fought for this case to get to this point, because surely without your help, without your work
importante
here in the country as well as internationally,
la sociedad civil organizada organizada
And of course,
niega
feminists, all the
defender
feminist movements.
ante
Without you, we
la
wouldn't be here
requisita
having this ceremony.
hoy día
So
conversaba
it's
con
important
compañeros de derechos humanos
to have civil society
hace
organized,
periodos
and when it
iniciales
overcomes
pudimos
all the
establecer
difficulties
muchos justamente con
that
eso,
are put
con una
before the
negación de la
citizens
justicia, con un olvido del
that
deber del Estado que
prevent
estamos
the
en la
state to
vulneración
acknowledge the rights. I was
de
talking to Joel today from the commission, and we thought about the social uprising, and it had so much to do with that. It had to do with denying people their agency, forgetting the duty of the state, of the authorities, the fact that we are here to
vida
serve
digna.
the citizens,
La verdad es que deja de tener
and
sentido.
that when the state many times
Este acto no es
comes up with
solamente
excuses in order to
para
avoid delivering justice, in
y
order
lo hacemos
to
porque
avoid acknowledging that the rights are being violated, that not
una manera también de ir
everything's
reconstruyendo
being done to give a life with dignity to people. It actually makes no sense for us to be here, but
reconstruir
because of that, the fact that we are here, it isn't only a symbolic act. It's not
está
that we are doing it because it is mandatory for us.
referido
It
al
is also a way for us to
de
continue
la
to repair the social needing between the social organizations, the people, the state, in order to create a fairer society.
y asume una serie de
We
compromisos
have already heard about Francisca's case in detail.
en
I just want to add that in August the 3rd, we signed the agreement by which the state acknowledges its international responsibility in this case,
individual,
as
familiar,
well as a number of commitments for comprehensive
pero
reparation.
también hacia la generación
And I'm happy to see that the reparations have a component which is individual, which is for her family, which is for her, and also that there is part of the reparation that goes towards the generation of the conditions to avoid that this happens again. So I'm asking our ministers. I see the Minister of Health here, and I want to ask all of you to try as hard as we can in all the instances of our work, because I imagine that this happened in the public healthcare sector. So I want to ask all of you to work, to think outside the box. Instead of just reading the sentence, we need to go beyond that. We need to think about how Francisca's case has an impact over the healthcare services throughout the country to avoid that this happens again, to prevent similar cases.
o sea, si hubo que recurrir a
There
instancias
have been thousands of
judiciales
cases.
porque las puertas en Chile se
This
cerraron.
instance
Pensemos, quienes somos autoridades acá, ministros,
requests from us that we remember that there was a denial of justice. If it got to a point where they needed to go to international instances, it was because in Chile they were unable to receive justice. So, those of us that perform in any type of authority position, let's think about this. Members of the Congress, Senate, etc., how many people are having justice denied it to them? So, I want to insist
para que nunca
in
más
something that I've said
estas generaciones
many times whenever we get together as a team, as part of the administration. We need to listen to people, those that are in pain. That is why they voted for us. To listen to them, to give them answers.
por
We have to work so that never again a victim of human rights violations also has to suffer through the lack of legal responses from the entities that are in charge of investigating. I don't even want to imagine how many times she had to be in a position of re victimization from 2002. Today, we are having this
que nuestro compromiso sea
event, this act of recognition, but what happened in the last 19 years, the hopelessness that we have learned to live with, that many times is part of our society because people in the end up saying, why am I even going to try? So let's take a serious commitment. Let's have a burning passion for this.
quiero contarles que nuestro gobierno decidió dar urgencia al proyecto de ley por el derecho de
Of
las mujeres
course,
a
we
decidir
also have to work
en
on
proyecto de
this, and our administration is fully committed to eradicate violence against women in all of its forms. And in this sense, I'd like to mention that our administration put urgency to the Bill of Law on the rights of women to a life free of violence. It sets up measurements of investigation and reparation and justice. So I know our minister would have loved to be here. She is at the moment traveling throughout Latin America. She is in Panama, if I remember correctly, precisely promoting the agenda of fighting violence against women. And it doesn't happen only within the boundaries of Chile, it needs to be spread throughout Latin America and throughout the world. So
a las organizaciones
I want to uh, remind her as well that that is the work that's going on. And the Bill of Law will give us institutional measures to avoid that Francisca's case happens again. And I want to publicly acknowledge the organizations Vivo Positivo for their work. Thank you so much for making us do this, even though we're happy to do it. And thank you to the Center for Reproductive Rights, because you were alongside with Francisca and also the feminist movement that allows this to happen, the discussion to be put on the table, that we have more awareness now that this cannot happen again.
en proceso de cumplimiento de 3 acuerdos de soluciones amistosas.
I would like to wrap up by
Hoy
saying that Chile has a number of cases still pending. I was just talking to our Minister of Foreign Affairs,
que lo digo por primera vez
and we are in the process of
que dentro de
fulfilling
sé que tenemos
3 friendly settlements,
reparaciones pendientes,
and I want
sentencias de la
to
Corte
give priority to those cases.
han
I
sido
know that this is a common agreement. I'm not just giving her an instruction. This is something that I'm saying publicly just for everyone else to know. We need those to be the priority. I know that we have 12 cases with pending reparations that have been sentenced by the Inter-American Court, but just precisely today we met with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights,
y acordamos
with the Minister of Justice, and with the Minister of Foreign Affairs to find out more details on the report that was conducted
de seguimiento
regarding the human rights situation after the social uprising.
no se repita
And
ni veo
the
que se repita
commissioner said something which is not so common that we have to be still proud of, that we're going to go through a process of following up of the recommendations that came from the commission, because the state, while we are in the administration, will not be reluctant, will not see the human rights organizations as a threat,
Muchas
rather
gracias.
as allies, as partners along the fight for a cause that inspires us, and as we said it earlier, so that Francisca's case never happens again. Thank you so much.
Todas y todos quienes nos han acompañado en esta tarde e invitamos a
Thank
las
you,
instituciones
President.
exteriores
With the words of the President, we
y
finalize the ceremony of recognition of responsibility of the state. On behalf of the state of Chile, we want to thank the presence of everyone that joined us today, and we want to welcome the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Antonio Urrejola, to the courtyard of Los Naranjos to take the questions from the press.